Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Coney Island from 1917. And this continues my series where I try to review the entire filmography and career of Buster Keaton. Today I'm going to talk about the fifth two-reeler slapstick comedy that Buster Keaton made, co-starring with Fatty Arbuckle and Al St. John. I think one of the things that's very true about this film, and is even true about comedy today, is often comedy's better when it has a looser plot and doesn't have a connective plot, and you can just do gags off of that. And that's almost true of like current comedies today as well, and I think those comedies often are stronger because they're almost more about the laughs than like making a bigger statement, which some comedies can do but oftentimes doesn't necessarily work out. And Coney Island doesn't really have a plot. It just feels like a location they have and they're going to do gags off of it, something that Buster Keaton would later do in other films. I can understand if people don't like that. This is often, you know, early film. It was literally 100 years ago at the time I'm making this video. It was a different era, really. Their knowledge of film language at this time wasn't really what it is today, 100 years later. This does feel a little haphazard and just like ideas they had on the fly and just filling out joke after joke, as you have these like very skilled vaudevillians who understand perfectly how to put gag after gag after gag and entertain an audience. And they do it very well in Coney Island. Even though this is incredibly nonsensical a lot of the time and just jumps from gag to gag, I found this to be a lot more fun than even like Oh Doctor, the other ones that try to have some strange little plot. The girl that each of them are trying to court at certain times is just kind of like this bouncing ball of following each of them with her and the gags that would happen because of that. And I really like that about this film, and it even has what is considered to be the first breaking the fourth wall gag with Fatty Arbuckle, which shows you how many different kinds of gags they'd really throw out there. What I really like about this film is it's not just slapstick jokes. It's mainly slapstick jokes, but they seem to be able to mix in other jokes just because they're throwing gag after gag after gag at you. It's often what you saw in later Looney Tunes, which obviously Buster Keaton, Fatty Arbuckle, Charlie Chaplin, and a whole bunch of others were a huge influence on what would later happen with Looney Tunes and Bugs Bunny. And I think Coney Island probably shows that more than any Fatty Arbuckle film I've seen before. In fact, many of the things I really love about Fatty Arbuckle's shorts are just the isolated gags. I often don't remember the plots as much, really, but in Coney Island it gives you all gags, and all those gags work excellently well. I had a really great time at Coney Island. It might not make a lot of sense. It might be a little crazy. It might be a little frenetic, but it'll keep you laughing. And I think that's really what audiences were coming to Coney Island to see, and probably what you'll want from a Fatty Arbuckle film even today. Fatty Arbuckle has been dragged to Coney Island by his mean, evil wife, spending time on the beach. At the same time, Buster Keaton is with his girl, who is played by Alice Mann and is often referred to as Pretty Girl, which I guess is her character name or something. Fatty Arbuckle tries to get away from his wife by burying himself in the sand because he sees a dog do it, and so she can't find him and runs away. And then she meets Al St. John, who is an old friend and is just called Old Friend. Al St. John sees Buster Keaton, and Pretty Girl ends up paying for her to get into Coney Island in Luna Park, and she goes with him because he has the money to, and Buster Keaton doesn't. And then Fatty Arbuckle steals her away, and then they get into all sorts of crazy nonsense, from Fatty Arbuckle cross-dressing at one point to Buster Keaton becoming a lifeguard and Al St. John going into prison and police involvement. It all goes into crazy nonsense as all of them try to woo the Pretty Girl away at Coney Island. One of the most noteworthy things about this film is that it was shot in Coney Island. This is still the time when Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle is still making his films in New York. Obviously he hasn't gone to California yet, and he shot this on location except for like a prison set, I think. It actually opens with some kind of looks like stock footage. Maybe they sent a camera guy out to shoot nice shots of Coney Island at night. None of this film takes place at night, but most of the feel of this film is like, hey, why not? Let's just put it in there. It's kind of cool looking. And they do that. They even have some footage of the Mardi Gras parade, which I didn't, maybe they still do in Coney Island, I'm not sure. It's interesting, you know, a lot of this takes place at Luna Park, which is a famous amusement park in Coney Island and is still there, by the way. It was there recently this summer. It's interesting to see what has changed and what hasn't. When they're on the beach, the rock formation you see in the ocean is like still there. In fact, I had a video Memorial Day to Labor Day where I have footage of that, and it's exactly the same, which is pretty crazy that 100 years later I could actually recognize parts of Coney Island. I think they used the location well. They just kind of used the location to have gags off of, and apparently they did do a lot of slapstick comedies at amusement parks and things like that, because people like amusement parks. They're fun, there's a lot of rides, there's an interesting backdrop for people to get into, and they use that well. They use that for a ton of gags in this, which shows like how smart they were at being gag men, really, at being vaudevillians, at understanding how to entertain and use the little things they had to entertain you. It seems to be a lot of people people online who hate this movie because it's so kind of nonsensical, but I quite like that about it. I don't think the fourth wall gag could work as well in another movie. I think it works well because it's just, they're throwing so many things out there that you're just ready to take any sort of different style of comedy. I like that kind of comedy that feels like a frenetic, energetic kid just throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks. Sometimes, like in the Tina Fey type of things, it does feel like they're throwing out too many things, but when you can get it to work, it feels really precise and well-mannered by a comedian who really knows what they're doing, and I think Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle did that very well in this movie. The fourth wall joke is Fatty Arbuckle's putting on his bathing suit, which is actually a woman's bathing suit, but he's putting it on and he asks the camera to go higher so he can take his pants off and stuff. That's considered to be the first one. Since so much of silent film is lost, there could have been an earlier one that we're just simply not aware of at this time. There could have been an earlier one that no one has talked about. I've noticed a lot of times when I'm researching these early Fatty Arbuckle films, there's several films that will literally say they're the first at one thing, and then each one will, particularly like Buster Keaton not having his stone-faced persona and like laughing and like crying and things like that. At this point, I've seen 5 of them and I'm already sick of reading about how, you know, you don't see Buster Keaton being Buster Keaton yet. That's something I've accepted at this point. It is a little shocking when you know the Buster Keaton persona so well, but since I've talked about it in so many of these reviews, yes, he breaks the stone-face thing yet again, and so I'm willing to go, sure, this is one of the first times I've seen someone break the fourth wall in a silent film, and I'm willing to say, yeah, probably, but it is kind of cool to see someone break the fourth wall 100 years ago. That's been going on that long. I don't think it had a name at that point. I'm not exactly sure, but it is interesting Fatty Arbuckle does it. They never really lose your attention in this film. You know, there's plenty of these where I've gone like, I really like that gag, but a lot of times like I like him and Al St. John having like antagonistic chemistry, like they really go at each other and fight each other and stuff, and you can tell these guys are like trained vaudevillians, and I think Al St. John was an acrobat or something, can really go at each other but in a really funny way. It was like actually funny watching these two guys beat each other up. This is one of my favorite Al St. John performances so far. He's probably the most evil of everyone. Buster Keaton's character is probably the one you feel the most sorry for, which is good because, spoilers, he gets the girl in the end, and I think he plays off the best. Fatty Arbuckle's obviously like cheating on his wife to be with this beautiful girl. Alice Mann's very beautiful. I was really surprised. I was like, whoa, and there's a scene where she's in a bathing suit where I was like, oh my god. Even though this movie was made before my grandparents were born, she still looks very pretty. There are certain things, like particularly how this film portrays women, having Fatty Arbuckle cross-dress in this film, are not as progressive as we certainly are today. I would say, in terms of both those things, this is kind of playing it off of like their buffoons, and it's not playing it off of like in a moralistic sense necessarily. I think they make the men look just as bad as the women, but neither are great stereotypes, but they're playing in more of a broad silent film sense. So if you're going to get upset about that, I think you should honestly just relax a little bit. It did surprise me a little bit how easy they went into that, and it doesn't show a more nuanced approach, which Buster Keaton would later do in the films he directed. But Fatty Arbuckle is kind of considered more of the broad populist silent comedian, so this plays much more into that. I like Coney Island quite a bit, and it was an interesting film to watch, particularly an area that I don't go into every year, but I semi-know, and seeing it 100 years ago was really cool. But also I think as an entertaining silent slapstick short, Coney Island definitely has it. It's probably one of the more entertaining Fatty Arbuckle shorts I've seen, with the Buster Keaton Al St. John team up within it. I sort of think, and this is a crazy Jim theory, that the guy who's running the strongman thing with the mallet, he looked like the guy from The Great Train Robbery, which was made in New Jersey, so plausibly, but I could not find anything to back that up. So that was just, this guy looks like that guy, and sure, why not? Maybe he's the guy from The Great Train Robbery. I don't know. I'm just saying he looks sort of like that, but I'm probably wrong. Just throwing that out there. I honestly think this is one of the more entertaining ones. It's probably a better one to show someone initially, and I believe it was one of the few when I initially picked up this DVD set of the Fatty Arbuckle Buster Keaton. It says Fatty Arbuckle Buster Keaton, but Al St. John should be in there, but I don't think people are buying DVDs for Al St. John, sorry. One of the ones I watched and really enjoyed, probably more than the other earlier ones. I think it's good because it has this freewheeling fun nature to it, and I think Coney Island displays that very well, and I really like that about it. I like kind of sometimes when comedies are just like, let's throw every gag. When they all work, it feels absolutely amazing. When they don't, it feels like someone throwing shit at the wall and it doesn't stick. And it's fun when it sticks, and Coney Island, it definitely sticks. It's a beautiful look at how wonderful Fatty Arbuckle could be in silent film comedy. I think it's probably one of his strongest I've seen so far. I'm not an expert at this time, having only reviewed 5, but of the 5 I've seen, this is one I would recommend higher, just because I liked all the gags in it and I had a really good time with it. And I think you will probably have a good time with it too. And if you're interested in getting into more Fatty Arbuckle, this is one I would definitely recommend, just to see all these amazing vaudevillians play off of each other in an amazing, spectacular fashion in Coney Island of 100 years ago. So if you have seen Coney Island and you would like to talk about it, then comment below. in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.